The rain was coming down so hard that David could barely see the road ahead. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, squinting through the windshield as the wipers worked overtime. His 7-year-old daughter Lily sat in the back seat, humming quietly to herself as she colored in her notebook. "Dad, why is it raining so much?" she asked, not looking up from her drawing. "Just a storm, sweetheart. We'll be home soon," David replied, keeping his voice calm even though he felt uneasy about these mountain roads. He'd driven this route 1,000 times, but today something felt different. The rain was heavier than usual, and the sky had turned an ugly shade of gray that made everything feel dark, even though it was only 3 in the afternoon. David worked construction, had done so for the past 12 years. His hands were calloused, his back ached most days, but it was honest work that put food on the table. After his wife passed away 3 years ago, he'd learned to handle everything alone. The cooking, the cleaning, the parent-teacher meetings, the braiding of Lily's hair that never quite looked right no matter how many YouTube videos he watched. But he managed. They managed together. As they rounded a bend in the mountain road, David heard it before he saw it. A deep rumbling sound like thunder but coming from the wrong direction. From above them instead of the sky. "Dad?" Lily's voice had gone small, scared. Then he saw it. The entire hillside was moving. Mud, rocks, trees, everything was sliding down toward the road in a massive wave of brown and gray. David's heart jumped into his throat. He slammed on the brakes, but not fast enough. The edge of the landslide caught the front of his truck, spinning them sideways. For a terrifying moment, David thought they were going over the edge into the valley below, but the truck held. They stopped just feet from the guardrail, tilted at an angle but safe. "Lily, are you okay?" David twisted around, his hands shaking. "I'm okay, Daddy." Her voice was trembling, but she was unhurt. "Thank God." David took a breath, trying to calm his racing heart. The landslide had stopped, leaving a mess of mud and debris across the entire road. They were trapped. He'd have to call for help, wait for the road crew to clear it. But then something caught his eye. Through the rain and mud, he saw lights. Hazard lights blinking orange in the gloom. A car. There was a car buried in all that mess. "Oh no," David whispered. Someone was in there. Someone was trapped. He didn't think. Later, when people asked him why he did it, he wouldn't have a good answer. He just knew someone needed help, and he was there. That's all that mattered. "Lily, I need you to listen very carefully," David said, turning to face his daughter fully. "I need you to stay in this truck. Lock the doors. Call 911 on my phone. Tell them there's been a landslide on Mountain Ridge Road near the old lookout point." "Can you do that?" Lily's eyes were wide, but she nodded. She was a brave kid. Always had been. David handed her his phone, made sure she locked the doors behind him, and then stepped out into the storm. The rain hit him like a wall, instantly soaking through his work jacket. The ground was slippery, unstable. Every step felt dangerous, like the earth might give way beneath him at any moment. He half ran, half slid down toward the buried car. It was a fancy one, he could tell that much. Black, expensive looking. The kind he'd never be able to afford in 10 lifetimes. But that didn't matter now. Through the cracked windshield, he could see someone inside. A woman slumped over the steering wheel. "Hey, can you hear me?" David shouted, banging on the window. The woman didn't move. The car was tilted at a bad angle, partially buried in mud. The driver's side door was completely blocked by debris. He'd have to try the passenger side. David ran around, his boots sinking into the mud with every step. The passenger door was jammed, but not buried. He pulled with all his strength. Nothing. He pulled again, harder this time, his muscles straining. The door creaked but held. He ran back to his truck, water streaming down his face. "Lily, I need the toolbox from the back. Can you unlock the door for just a second?" His daughter quickly unlocked and relocked the door, pushing the heavy toolbox through the gap. David grabbed his pry bar and ran back to the car. This time, he wedged the bar into the door frame and threw all his weight against it. The metal groaned, bent, and finally gave way. The door swung open. The woman was in her early 40s maybe, wearing a business suit that probably cost more than David made in a month. Her leg was pinned under the dashboard and water was starting to seep into the car from somewhere. Not a lot yet, but enough to worry him. More rain was coming, he could feel it. If another surge of mud came down, this car would be completely buried, ma'am. "Can you hear me?" David leaned in, checking for a pulse. There. Weak but steady. She was alive. The woman's eyes fluttered open. They were dark brown, confused, filled with pain. Don't move, David said gently. You've been in an accident. I'm going to get you out, okay? She tried to speak but only managed a weak sound. Her leg was definitely trapped. David could see the dashboard had crumpled in the impact, pinning her shin. Moving her wrong could make it worse, but leaving her here wasn't an option. He heard sirens in the distance. Good. Lily had gotten through to 911, but they were at least 15 minutes away, maybe more in this weather. The woman didn't have 15 minutes if more mud came down. David made a decision. He reached under the dashboard, feeling for what was holding her leg. His construction work had taught him about leverage, about how things fit together. He found the twisted metal, found where it had bent and trapped her. Using his pry bar, he carefully worked to create space, just a little bit at a time. The woman gasped in pain as the pressure shifted. "I know it hurts," David said, his voice steady even though his hands were shaking from adrenaline. "Just a little more. Stay with me." Another careful movement of the bar, a little more space. The woman's leg came free. She cried out, and David saw blood on her pants leg, but at least she was free. "Okay, I've got you," David said, carefully sliding his arms under her. She was lighter than he expected, or maybe the adrenaline made her feel that way. He lifted her out of the car, cradling her against his chest as he struggled back up the slope toward his truck. The rain was coming down even harder now. David's boots kept slipping in the mud. He went down on one knee, nearly dropping her, but managed to hold on. "Keep moving. Don't stop." Behind them, he heard a deep rumble. Another surge was coming. David forced his legs to move faster, his lungs burning, his arms screaming from the effort. Just a few more feet. He reached his truck just as another wave of mud crashed down over the buried car. It disappeared completely under the brown sludge, swallowed whole, 30 seconds later, and they both would have been buried. David yanked open the truck door. "Lily, move to the back, honey." He carefully laid the woman across the front seat. She was drifting in and out of consciousness, mumbling something he couldn't understand. He grabbed an old blanket from behind the seat, tucking it around her. His hands were shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. He'd done it. She was safe. They were safe. The woman's hand suddenly shot out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes opened, focusing on him with an intensity that made him freeze. She stared at him for a long moment, her lips moving, trying to form words. "It's okay," David said softly. "You're safe now. Help is coming." But she kept staring at him, her grip on his wrist tightening. Then clear as day she spoke. Two words that made absolutely no sense. "You're hired." David blinked, certain he'd heard wrong. "What?" But her eyes had already rolled back. She went limp, unconscious again. David checked her pulse. Still there, still steady. Whatever she'd meant, it would have to wait. The sirens were getting closer. David looked back at his daughter, who was watching everything with wide eyes. "Is she going to be okay, Daddy?" Lily asked in a small voice. "Yes, sweetheart. She's going to be okay." David hoped he was right. 20 minutes later, the paramedics arrived. They took over, loading the woman into an ambulance, checking her vitals, asking David questions he barely heard. A police officer took his statement. The fire department started working on clearing the road. Through it all, David kept hearing those two words in his head. "You're hired." What could that possibly mean? 3 days passed, and David tried to forget about the strange woman and her even stranger words. He went back to work, swinging hammers and hauling lumber like always. His boss had given him a hard time about being late that day, even after David explained about the landslide. Some people just didn't care about anything except the job getting done. Lily had told everyone at school about the rescue. Her teacher had called David that evening, saying how brave Lily had been to call 911. The story had even made the local news, though they'd gotten half the details wrong. David didn't care about the attention. He was just glad everyone was okay. Then on Thursday afternoon, his phone rang. Unknown number. David almost didn't answer. Usually unknown numbers meant someone trying to sell him something he couldn't afford. "Hello? Is this David Chen?" A woman's voice, professional and polite. "No, this is David Torres. You might have the wrong number." "I apologize." "David Torres, are you the man who rescued Catherine Chen from a landslide on Mountain Ridge Road 3 days ago?" David's grip tightened on the phone. "Yeah, that's me." "Is she okay?" "I've been wondering. Ms. Chen is doing well considering the circumstances. She's asked to see you. Would you be able to come to Mercy General Hospital downtown? She'd like to thank you in person, downtown. That was a 2-hour drive from his small mountain town. David looked at his watch. He was supposed to pick up Lily from school in an hour. I don't know. That's pretty far, and I've got my daughter to think about. Ms. Chen anticipated that might be an issue. She's arranged for a car service to bring you here at your convenience. All expenses paid, of course. David frowned. A car service? Who was this woman? Look, she doesn't need to do all that. I was just helping someone in trouble. Anyone would have done the same thing. Perhaps, the woman on the phone said, and David could hear the smile in her voice. But you're the one who did it. Ms. Chen is quite insistent. Would Saturday work for you? David thought about it. His mom could watch Lily on Saturday. She'd been bugging him to let her take Lily for a day anyway, and he had to admit, he was curious about what the woman wanted, and those strange words kept echoing in his head. Okay, Saturday morning, but I'll drive myself. Very well. I'll text you the room number. Thank you, Mr. Torres. The call ended, leaving David staring at his phone with more questions than answers. Saturday came faster than David expected. He dropped Lily off at his mom's apartment, ignoring her pointed questions about why he was driving all the way downtown, and made the long drive through the mountains. The road was clear now, the landslide cleaned up like it had never happened. But David remembered. He'd dream about it for weeks afterward, that moment when he'd almost been too late. Mercy General Hospital was the kind of place David had only seen in movies. Shining glass towers, perfectly manicured gardens, valet parking. He felt out of place in his clean jeans and button-up shirt, the nicest clothes he owned. The receptionist directed him to the 4th floor, the private wing. David's unease grew with every step. Private wing meant money, serious money. He found the room number and knocked softly. Come in, a woman's voice called. David pushed open the door and stopped in his tracks. The room looked more like a hotel suite than a hospital room. A large window overlooked the city. There was a couch, a desk with a computer, and in the middle of it all, sitting up in a hospital bed that probably cost more than his truck, was the woman he'd pulled from the car. She looked different than he remembered. Alert, focused, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a silk robe instead of a hospital gown, and despite the cast on her leg and the fading bruises on her face, she radiated an energy that filled the room. Mr. Torres, she said, setting down the tablet she'd been reading. Please sit down. David moved toward the chair by her bed, feeling like he was intruding on something. How are you feeling? Better than I should be, thanks to you. She extended her hand. Catherine Chen, though I suppose we've technically already met. Her handshake was firm, confident. David noticed her hands were soft, unmarked by labor. These were hands that pushed papers and typed on keyboards, not hands that knew real work. I'm glad you're okay, David said, meaning it. I've been wondering. I'll be in this cast for 6 weeks and I'll have some impressive scars, but the doctors say I'll make a full recovery. They also said if you'd been 5 minutes later, the outcome would have been very different. Catherine's expression grew serious. You saved my life, Mr. Torres, in the most literal sense of the word. David shifted uncomfortably. I just did what anyone would do. That's where you're wrong, Catherine said, a slight smile playing at her lips. Most people would have driven past. Most people would have called for help and waited. Most people wouldn't have risked their own life and their child's safety to save a complete stranger. But you did. She picked up her tablet, tapped something, and turned it to face him. David saw a photo of himself from the local news article. Below it was text, lots of text. I had my assistant research you, Catherine said. I hope you don't mind. David Torres, 34 years old, construction worker at Hillside Development Company. Widower, single father to 1 daughter, no criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Volunteer coach for the youth soccer league. By all accounts, a genuinely good man. David felt his face heat up. You didn't need to investigate me. I'm not looking for anything, I know. That's what makes this conversation easier. Catherine set the tablet aside. Do you know who I am, Mr. Torres? The woman I pulled from a car? She laughed, a real laugh that seemed to surprise even her. True. But I'm also the CEO of Chen Enterprises. We're a real estate development company based here in the city. We work on projects across the region, commercial and residential properties worth hundreds of millions of dollars. David's eyebrows rose. Hundreds of millions. He could barely wrap his head around that kind of money. I was on my way to inspect a new project site in the mountains when the landslide hit. Catherine continued. A sustainable housing development we're planning for your area, actually. It's a big project, our biggest this year. And it's been nothing but problems. Bad contractors, cost overruns, conflicts with local regulations. My project manager quit 2 weeks ago, and I've been trying to salvage it personally. Sounds rough, David said, not sure where this was going. It is. And when I was trapped in that car, in pain and certain I was going to die, I had what they call a moment of clarity. I realized that I'd surrounded myself with the wrong people. People with impressive resumes and fancy degrees who look good on paper, but can't actually solve problems. People who talk a great game but crumble under pressure. Catherine leaned forward, her eyes locked on David's. Then you showed up, a complete stranger who didn't hesitate for a second. You assessed the situation, made a plan, and executed it under the worst possible conditions. You saved my life with nothing but determination and practical skill, and that's when I knew. Knew what? David asked, though part of him was starting to guess. That you're exactly the kind of person I need. When I said you're hired, I meant it. I want you to be the project manager for our mountain development. For a long moment, David just stared at her. Then he laughed. He couldn't help it. Ma'am, no offense, but I think the pain medication might be affecting your judgment. I'm a construction worker. I swing hammers and pour concrete. I don't know anything about managing projects worth millions of dollars. You know more than you think, Catherine said calmly. Can you read blueprints? Of course. Can you coordinate multiple teams of workers, keep them on schedule, and maintain quality control? That's basically my job every day. Can you solve unexpected problems under pressure? David thought about the landslide, about 100 job sites where things had gone wrong. Yeah, I can do that. Then you have all the skills you need. The rest can be learned. What can't be learned is integrity, courage, and genuine leadership. Those qualities are either in someone or they're not. And you have them in abundance, David shook his head. This is crazy. I have a high school diploma and 12 years of construction experience. Your board of directors would laugh me out of the room. The board works for me, not the other way around, Catherine said with a smile. And I didn't build a multi-million-dollar company by playing it safe. Some of my best decisions looked crazy at the time. This is one of those decisions. She named a salary. David felt his stomach drop. It was more than double what he made now, more than he'd ever imagined making. That's just the starting salary, Catherine continued. There's also a benefits package, health insurance, retirement contributions, and if the project succeeds, a significant bonus. You'd be based in the regional office near your town, so you wouldn't have to relocate. You could still be there for your daughter every day. David's mind was racing. With that kind of money, he could fix the leaky roof on his house. He could afford the special tutoring Lily's teacher kept recommending. He could maybe finally stop lying awake at night wondering how he'd pay for everything. But it was too much. Too fast. People like him didn't get opportunities like this. I need to think about it, David said quietly. Of course, I wouldn't expect you to decide right now. Catherine pulled out a business card from the table beside her bed and handed it to him. Take a week. Talk to you. David couldn't sleep that night. He kept turning Catherine Chen's business card over in his hands, reading it again and again like the words might change. Around 2 a.m, he gave up trying to sleep and made himself a cup of coffee in his small kitchen. The house was quiet. Lily was sleeping peacefully in her room, probably dreaming about the new doll his mom had bought her. His mom meant well, but she had a habit of spending money on Lily that she should be saving for herself. That's what worried David most about turning down Catherine's offer. It wasn't just about him anymore. Monday morning came too fast. David dropped Lily at school and headed to work, trying to act normal. But his mind was somewhere else entirely. His coworker, Rick, noticed right away. You okay, man? You've been staring at that wall for 10 minutes. David blinked, realizing he'd completely zoned out. Yeah, just thinking about something. Must be important. You almost hit your thumb with that hammer twice already. David set down the hammer. Can I ask you something? If someone offered you a job that could change your whole life but you weren't sure you were qualified for it, would you take it? Rick wiped the sweat from his forehead. Depends. Is the money good? Really good. Then what's the problem? I'm not sure I can do it. It's way outside my experience, Rick laughed. Brother, we climb up on roofs 40 feet in the air every day. We work with electricity that could kill us if we mess up. We operate machinery that weighs thousands of pounds. Everything's outside our experience until we learn it. That's life. It was simple advice, but it stuck with David all day. That evening, he decided to talk to the person whose opinion mattered most. His mom. She lived in a small apartment on the other side of town, the same apartment she'd lived in since David's dad died 15 years ago. When David showed up after dinner with Lily in tow, his mom knew immediately something was up. "Okay, spill it," she said, pouring him a glass of iced tea. "You've got that look on your face. The same look you had when you were trying to decide whether to propose to Melissa." Hearing his late wife's name still hurt, even after 3 years. But the pain wasn't as sharp as it used to be. Time had done its work. David told his mom everything. About Catherine Chen. About the job offer, about the salary that seemed too good to be true. His mom listened without interrupting, the way she always did. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Do you remember when your father wanted to start his own landscaping business?" she finally said. David nodded. He'd been 12 at the time. Everyone told him he was crazy, said he should stick with his steady job at the factory, but he did it anyway. And it was the best 3 years of his life before he got sick. He used to say that regret weighs more than failure. "This is different, Mom. I've got Lily to think about. If I mess this up, I'm not just hurting myself." His mom reached across the table and took his hand. "And if you don't try, what are you teaching Lily? That it's better to play it safe than to reach for something better. That opportunities like this should be turned down because we don't think we're good enough?" David hadn't thought about it that way. "You've been in survival mode since Melissa died," his mom continued. "And that's okay. You had to be. But Lily's getting older. She needs to see you thrive, not just survive. She needs to see that hard work and courage pay off." From the living room, they heard Lily laugh at something on TV. David thought about her teacher's concerned face last week when she'd mentioned Lily needed glasses. He thought about the holes in his roof that leaked every time it rained. He thought about the community college fund he'd started for Lily that barely had $2,000 in it. "I'm scared." "Mom." "Good. If you weren't scared, it wouldn't be worth doing." That night, David lay in bed and thought about the past 3 years. After Melissa died from cancer, he'd been lost. She'd been the organized one, the planner, the one who handled all the important stuff. David had felt like he was drowning, trying to figure out how to be both parents to a 4-year-old while working full-time and keeping the house from falling apart. He'd learned, though. Slowly, painfully, he'd figured it out. He'd learned to braid hair by watching videos. He'd learned to cook more than just mac and cheese. He'd learned to help with homework and comfort nightmares and be present even when he was exhausted. If he could learn all that, maybe he could learn to manage a construction project. By Wednesday, David had made his decision. But before he called Catherine, he needed to do something else first. He drove to Lily's school during his lunch break and found her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, in her classroom. "Mr. Torres, is everything all right?" she asked, concern on her face. "Everything's fine. I actually wanted to ask you about something. You mentioned Lily might benefit from some special tutoring and that she needs glasses. How much would all that cost?" Mrs. Patterson named some figures. David did the math in his head. With his current salary, it would take him 6 months to save up that money, and that was only if nothing else went wrong. With Catherine's salary, he could pay for it immediately and still have money left over. "Can you recommend someone for the tutoring?" David asked. Mrs. Patterson smiled. "Of course. Does this mean you're able to afford it now?" "I will be," David said. "Soon." That evening, David called the number on Catherine's business card. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Torres, I was hoping I'd hear from you." "I've made a decision," David said, "but I have some conditions." "I'm listening." "I need to stay based near my home. I can't be driving 2 hours each way every day. Lily needs me around. The regional office is 20 minutes from your house. That's where you'd be working." "Okay. Second condition. If I mess this up, if I'm not cut out for this, I need your word that you'll tell me. I don't want to waste your time or mine." "You have my word," Catherine said, "though I don't think that's going to be a problem." David took a deep breath. "Then I accept. When do I start?" "How's Monday sound?" "Monday's perfect." After they discussed the details and David hung up, he sat in his truck for a long time, his hands shaking. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Fear and excitement warred in his chest. That weekend, David took Lily out for ice cream. She ordered her usual chocolate chip and David got vanilla. "Lily, I need to talk to you about something," David said as they sat at a picnic table outside the shop. "Am I in trouble?" Lily asked, her eyes wide. "No, baby, nothing like that. I got a new job. It's going to be different from what I've been doing, and I'm going to be learning a lot of new things. Will you still pick me up from school?" "Every day," David promised. "This job is actually going to give us more time together, not less. And it means we can fix the roof and get you those glasses your teacher mentioned and maybe even take a real vacation this summer." Lily's face lit up. "Like to the beach?" "Maybe the beach," David said, smiling. "Would you like that?" "Yes. Can Grandma come too?" "We'll see what we can do." Lily went back to her ice cream, happy and unconcerned. Kids had it easy that way. They trusted that adults would figure things out. David wished he had that kind of confidence. Monday morning arrived with cold clarity. David put on the one suit he owned, the same one he'd worn to Melissa's funeral. It didn't fit quite right anymore, but it would have to do. He'd need to buy some better clothes now that he could afford them. He dropped Lily at school, hugged her extra tight, and drove to the regional office of Chen Enterprises. The building was nicer than he expected, modern glass and steel, but not as intimidating as the downtown headquarters. The receptionist smiled when he walked in. "Mr. Torres? Ms. Chen said to expect you. I'll take you to your office, my office." The words felt surreal. The office was on the second floor with a window overlooking the mountains. It had a desk, a computer, shelves for books, and space for everything he'd need. His name was already on the door. "The team meeting is in an hour," the receptionist said. "Ms. Chen wanted you to have time to settle in first. If you need anything, just call extension 3. After she left, David stood in the middle of the office, feeling completely out of place. What was he doing here? He was a construction worker. He should be on a job site somewhere, not in an office with carpet and climate control. His phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. "Remember, you saved my life with skills you already had. This is just a different kind of problem to solve. You've got this." David read the text 3 times, then sat down at his desk. On the computer screen was a welcome message and a folder labeled Mountain View Project Briefing Documents. He clicked it open and started reading. The project was ambitious. A sustainable housing community built into the mountainside, designed to work with the natural landscape instead of against it. Solar panels, rainwater collection, minimal environmental impact. It was exactly the kind of thing David believed in, but the budget was terrifying. Millions of dollars. One mistake and he could bankrupt the project. The thought made his palms sweat. An hour later, David walked into the conference room for his first team meeting. Around the table sat a dozen people in business attire, all looking at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. A man in an expensive suit at the head of the table stood up. "You must be David Torres. I'm Walter Preston, Vice President of Operations. Catherine told me about your rather unconventional hiring." There was something in Walter's tone that Davy. 6 months passed like a blur. David's days became a routine of early mornings, site inspections, conference calls, and late nights reviewing documents. The work was hard, but it was a different kind of hard than construction. His back didn't ache at the end of the day, but his brain felt like it had run a marathon. The Mountain View project was coming together, though. David had implemented his suggestions from that first meeting, and slowly things started moving forward. The permits came through after he spent 3 afternoons at the county office, learning everyone's names and bringing coffee. The contractors got back on schedule after David showed up at 5 in the morning to personally oversee the work. The environmental studies got expedited by breaking them into phases just like he'd suggested. Walter Preston hated every minute of it. He'd been undermining David from day one, questioning his decisions in meetings, sending lengthy emails to Catherine about David's lack of formal training, and generally making life difficult. But David had dealt with difficult coworkers before. He kept his head down and focused on results. The first real paycheck had been surreal. David had stared at the number in his bank account for a full minute, certain there'd been a mistake, but it was real. All of it was real. He'd paid off his credit cards, fixed the roof, bought Lily new glasses, and enrolled her in tutoring. He'd even taken his mom out to a nice restaurant for her birthday. The look on her face when he paid the bill without worrying about the cost had been worth everything. But success came with its own pressures. The project was David's responsibility now, Every decision, every problem, every delay, it all fell on his shoulders. Some nights he'd lie awake, running through contingency plans, worrying about things that might go wrong. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Friday afternoon, and David was at the construction site doing his weekly walkthrough. His phone rang. Catherine Chen. David, I'm coming up to see the site tomorrow. I'd like a full tour. Tomorrow's Saturday, David said, surprised. Catherine usually gave more notice, I know. Is that a problem? No, of course not. I'll make sure everything's ready. Good, and David? Bring your daughter. I'd like to meet her. The call ended before David could ask why. He stood there, phone in hand, wondering what this meant. Catherine had been supportive from afar, but she'd never visited the site. And asking to meet Lily was unusual. That evening, David explained to Lily that they were going to the construction site tomorrow to meet his boss. Is she nice? Lily asked. I think so, David said. She's the woman I pulled from the car, remember? Oh, the one who said you're hired? David smiled. That's the one. She must be really smart, Lily said matter-of-factly. She knew you'd be good at your job before you even started. Kids had a way of simplifying things that adults made complicated. Saturday morning was clear and beautiful. David drove Lily up the mountain to the construction site. The view was spectacular, overlooking the valley with mountains rising on all sides. The foundation work was done, and several structures were beginning to take shape. It looked like progress. It looked like something to be proud of. Catherine arrived right on time, driving herself despite the cast that had come off only 2 weeks ago. She moved with a slight limp, but otherwise seemed fully recovered. She was dressed casually, jeans and a light jacket, looking more relaxed than David had ever seen her. Mr. Torres, she said, shaking his hand. Then she turned to Lily. And you must be Lily. Your father has told me a lot about you. He talks about you too, Lily said. He says you're really smart and kind of scary sometimes. David felt his face go red. Lily, I didn't exactly say it like that. Catherine laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even her. I like her. She's honest. The tour took 2 hours. David walked Catherine through every phase of the project, explaining the decisions he'd made and why. She asked smart questions, challenging some of his choices but mostly nodding in approval. Lily followed along, occasionally asking questions of her own that made both adults smile. Why are the houses so close to the trees? Lily asked at one point. Because we want to disturb as little of the natural environment as possible, David explained. The trees were here first. We're just visitors. That's good, Lily said seriously. Animals need their homes too. Catherine watched this exchange with an odd expression on her face, something between sadness and longing. After the tour, David had packed a picnic lunch. They sat at one of the completed viewing platforms, eating sandwiches and looking out over the valley. Lily had run off to explore, staying within sight but giving the adults space to talk. The project is ahead of schedule, Catherine said, and under budget. Do you know how rare that is? I'm just doing my job, David said. You're exceeding every expectation I had, and my expectations were already high. Catherine paused, watching Lily chase a butterfly. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. How do you do it? Balance work and being a parent? I watch you with Lily, and it's obvious she's your priority, but the project hasn't suffered for it. If anything, it's thrived. How? David thought about the question. I learned to be efficient. I can't waste time in endless meetings or on tasks that don't matter. I have to focus on what's important because I need to be home for dinner most nights. And honestly, having Lily grounds me. When work gets overwhelming, I remember that she's what matters. The project is important, but she's everything. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. I've spent 20 years building my company. I've sacrificed everything for it. Relationships, friendships, any chance at a family. I told myself it was worth it, that success was enough. But lately I'm not so sure. David didn't know what to say to that. This was Catherine Chen, CEO, powerful and wealthy and accomplished. What could he possibly tell her? It's not too late, he finally said. My wife used to say that every day is a chance to make different choices. Your wife sounds like she was wise. She was. Cancer took her 3 years ago, and I'm still figuring out how to live without her. But one thing I know for sure. The time I spent with her, the family we built together, that mattered more than any job or achievement ever could. Catherine wiped at her eyes. David pretended not to notice. Lily came running back out of breath and excited. Dad, there's a creek down there with fish in it. Can we come back and go fishing sometime? Maybe, David said, smiling. If it's okay with Ms. Chen, this is her property. Please, Catherine said. Call me Catherine. And yes, you're both welcome here any time, Lily beamed. Then, with the fearless directness of a child, she asked, Do you have any kids? Lily, David warned. It's okay, Catherine said. No, I don't have children. I always thought there would be time for that later, but I kept pushing later further and further away. Now I'm 42 and later is starting to feel like never. That's sad, Lily said simply. You seem like you'd be a good mom. The words hung in the air. Catherine's expression was unreadable. The drive back to town was quiet. David dropped Catherine at her car, and she thanked him for the tour. But something had shifted between them. The professional distance had cracked, revealing something more human underneath. 2 weeks later, the crisis hit. David was in his office when Nicole, the architect, burst in without knocking. Her face was pale. We have a problem. A big one. She spread geological survey results across his desk. New tests, more comprehensive than the original ones, showed instability in a section of the development site. The same kind of unstable ground that had caused the landslide 6 months ago. David's stomach dropped. This was bad. Really bad. If they'd already built on that section, they'd have to tear it down. The cost would be enormous and the delays would be catastrophic. Have we built on this section yet? David asked, scanning the maps. No, but it's scheduled to start next week. Phase 3 of the development, David thought fast. Stop all work on Phase 3 immediately. I need to consult with some people. Over the next 3 days, David barely slept. He talked to geological engineers, old-timers who'd lived in the mountains for decades, university professors who specialized in soil stability. He researched historical landslides in the area, weather patterns, drainage systems. He called in favors from every contact he'd made in 12 years of construction work. And slowly, a solution emerged. It would require regrading the entire section, installing an extensive drainage system, using terracing techniques that the local Native American tribes had used for centuries. It would be more expensive than the original plan, but it would be safer, much safer. David put together a comprehensive proposal, complete with cost estimates, timeline projections, and engineering certifications. Then he scheduled an emergency meeting with the board of directors. Walter Preston was waiting for him. David could see the satisfaction in his eyes. This was what Walter had been waiting for. Proof that David wasn't qualified for the job. Ladies and gentlemen, Walter began the meeting. We're here because of a serious problem with the Mountain View project. A problem that should have been caught earlier if proper procedures had been followed. I move that we suspend David Torres from his position pending a full investigation. On what grounds? Catherine asked coldly. She was attending the meeting remotely, her face on the conference room screen. Negligence. The geological surveys should have been more C. David sat across from Catherine at his small kitchen table, his mind racing. This wasn't something he'd prepared for. He'd spent months thinking about project timelines and budget reports, not about feelings. Not about this. I don't know what to say, David finally managed. You don't have to say anything right now, Catherine said quickly. I just needed you to know. I've been carrying this around for weeks and it was eating me up inside. If you're not interested, we can pretend I never said anything. I'll remain professional, I promise. David rubbed his face with his hands. It's not that simple, Catherine. You're my boss. You're wealthy, successful, you live in a completely different world than I do. And I have Lily to think about. Everything I do affects her. I know. Believe me, I've thought about all of that. I've tried to talk myself out of this feeling a dozen different ways. But it won't go away. Catherine's voice was soft, vulnerable in a way he'd never heard before. You're the first person in 20 years who's made me want something besides success. From the living room, they could hear Lily laughing at something on TV. The sound grounded David, reminded him what was at stake. I need time to think, David said. This is a lot to process, of course. Take all the time you need. Catherine stood up, composing herself back into the professional woman he knew. I should go. Thank you for dinner. David walked her to the door. Before she left, Catherine turned back. For what it's worth, I meant what I said about being professional. Whatever you decide, your job is secure. I would never use my position to pressure you into anything. You have my word on that. After she left, David sat on his couch staring at nothing. Lily climbed up next to him. Is Catherine okay? She seemed sad. She's fine, baby. Just dealing with some complicated grown-up stuff. Do you like her? Lily asked with the directness only children possess. What do you mean? Like her. The way you used to like Mom. David's throat tightened. I don't know, maybe. Is that okay? Lily thought about it seriously. Mom would want you to be happy. She told me that before she died. She said that loving someone doesn't mean you stop living when they're gone. David pulled his daughter close, amazed at her wisdom. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart, Lily said matter-of-factly. You just don't always notice. That night after Lily went to bed, David found himself looking at old photos of Melissa. They'd been so young when they got married. Barely 22, full of dreams about the future. She'd wanted to travel, to open a bakery, to have 3 kids. Cancer had stolen all of that. But she'd also told him in those final weeks that he needed to live. Not just survive, but really live. At the time, he'd barely heard her, too consumed with grief and fear. Now, 3 years later, her words came back to him. The next few weeks were awkward at work. Catherine kept her word about remaining professional, but David could feel the tension between them. Every meeting, every email, every phone call carried an unspoken question. What are you going to do? David threw himself into the project. The new drainage and terracing system was being implemented, and it required constant oversight. He spent long days at the site, supervising work crews, solving problems as they arose, making sure everything met the highest safety standards. The project was transforming into something beautiful. Sustainable homes built into the mountainside, designed to work with nature instead of against it. Solar panels that looked like natural extensions of the roofs, rainwater collection systems that fed into community gardens, hiking trails that wound through preserved forest. It was everything David believed a development should be. One afternoon, Nicole found him standing at the highest point of the site, looking out over the valley. Penny, for your thoughts, she asked. Just thinking about how far we've come. 6 months ago, I didn't think I could do this. Now look at it. You've done more than manage a project, David. You've created something meaningful. This is going to change how people think about mountain development. Nicole paused. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. What's going on between you and Catherine? And before you say nothing, know that half the office has noticed the tension. David sighed. It's complicated, isn't it always? Nicole smiled. Look, I've known Catherine for 5 years. I've never seen her look at anyone the way she looks at you. And I've seen how you look at her when you think nobody's watching. Life's too short for complicated. Trust me, I learned that the hard way. What if I mess it up? What if I'm not what she needs? What if you are? Nicole countered. What if you're exactly what she needs and she's exactly what you need, and the only thing standing in the way is fear? David thought about that conversation for days. He thought about Melissa's last words to him. He thought about Lily, about the kind of example he wanted to set for her. He thought about Catherine, about her vulnerability and her courage in admitting her feelings. Finally, he made a decision. The Mountain View project was scheduled for its grand opening in 2 weeks. Media was coming, local officials, potential buyers. It was going to be the biggest moment of David's professional life. But before that happened, he needed to do something else. He called Catherine and asked her to meet him at the site on Saturday. Just the 2 of them. She arrived right on time, looking nervous. David walked her to the completed viewing platform, the same place they'd had a picnic with Lily months ago. I've been thinking about what you said, David began, and I need to be honest with you. Catherine's face was carefully neutral, preparing for rejection. When you first offered me this job, I thought you were crazy. I thought there was no way I could do it. But you saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. You took a risk on me when nobody else would have, David. Let me finish, he said gently. These past 6 months have changed my life. Not just financially, but in every way. I've learned that I'm capable of more than I thought. I've learned that taking risks can pay off. I've learned that sometimes the scariest decisions are the ones that change our lives for the better. He took a breath. You asked me if I felt the same way you did. The truth is, I've been fighting my feelings because I was scared. Scared of failing, scared of not being enough, scared of betraying Melissa's memory. But I realized something. Being scared and being brave aren't opposites. Being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared. David reached out and took Catherine's hand. So yes, Catherine, I feel the same way. I don't know how this is going to work, or if we're making a huge mistake, but I want to try, if you still want to. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. You're sure? Because once we do this, everything changes. The office politics will get complicated. People will have opinions. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having is easy, David said, echoing words his father had once told him. I learned that from someone very smart who took a chance on a construction worker with no qualifications. Catherine laughed through her tears. I'm going to hold you to that on days when you want to kill me for micromanaging. And I'm going to remind you of it when you're working too late and neglecting the people who care about you. They stood there, for a long moment, hands clasped, looking out over the development that had brought them together. Then Catherine did something that surprised him. She kissed him, gentle and tentative, like she was afraid he might disappear. When they broke apart, David was smiling. That was nice, just nice? Catherine asked, raising an eyebrow. Okay, it was better than nice. They sat on the platform talking for hours about everything and nothing, about their fears and hopes, about how to navigate their relationship while maintaining professionalism, about what they wanted for the future. Catherine admitted she was terrified of being a stepmother figure to Lily. David admitted he was terrified of not being sophisticated enough for Catherine's world. We're a mess, Catherine said finally. Yeah, David agreed, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't have to have everything figured out right away. The grand opening of Mountain View came 2 weeks later. National media showed up, impressed by the innovative, sustainable design. Local officials praised the project as a model for future development. Potential buyers toured the completed homes, many putting down deposits on the spot. During her speech, Catherine stood on a small stage, looking out at the crowd. David stood off to the side with Lily, watching. This project represents more than just buildings, Catherine said. It represents a new way of thinking about development. It represents the idea that we can grow and prosper while respecting the environment and the community, and none of it would have been possible without one man's vision and dedication. She gestured to David. David Torres came to this project with no corporate experience, no fancy degrees, no traditional qualifications. What he brought instead was integrity, practical wisdom, and the courage to do what was right even when it was difficult. He's not just the project manager of Mountain View. He's the reason it exists at all. The crowd applauded. David felt his face flush. Lily squeezed his hand. That's you, Dad. She's talking about you. After the ceremony, people congratulated David, asked questions about the project, wanted to know his plans for future developments. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. Later, after most of the crowd had left, David found Catherine sitting alone on a bench, watching the sun set over